Fergus and Amy of Ethos and Tru Health. You are very welcome to the Lead Well podcast.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Mark.
I'm really looking forward to this episode, not only to unpack a little bit of your journey as founders, but also, I suppose, what you stand for, what your companies stand for as well, is certainly something which aligns very closely with the podcast. And maybe for our listeners, I'd love you to map out, because you've launched Tru Health very recently, and it very much aligns with Ethos and where that business started and obviously where that evolved. And I really like that about businesses, when you see a new business naturally being born out of an existing business. They complement one another. So could you unpack that a little bit for us, what that journey for Ethos has looked like and how it's led to Tru Health?
Sure, yeah, I can maybe take it. We were both working, if we go back to 2019, pre-COVID, we were both working corporate jobs on that wheel. And then I had a period of like really poor health. So for 9 months, I had symptom-wise, it was like chronic fatigue, essentially. I was able to go to work, but it felt like I just had a cloud over my head every day. That flu-y feeling you get, but having that like for month on month, and was playing sports, couldn't get through 20 minutes of a game. I was having breathing difficulties, and as Amy will attest to, like I was just a complete pain in the ass. Anytime like you wanted to go out to, meet friends or whatever, that was the last thing I wanted to do. And during that period, I obviously went to the doctor multiple times, as you would. Couldn't really understand what was going on, but they were thinking, there must be an infection. They gave me multiple rounds of antibiotics. Then my breathing was being affected, so they gave me an inhaler. And after 9 months, I didn't really know where to go. I was just getting progressively worse. So in that state, you're willing to try anything. I was looking at Chinese medicine, acupuncture, but I got introduced to a family friend, a doctor who was a doctor in functional medicine. Not many people will be familiar with functional medicine, even though it is becoming a little bit more mainstream and known now. The premise behind functional medicine is trying to get to the root cause of your symptoms. So not just saying, okay, you've fatigue, here's a medication for fatigue. It's like, what's driving that? What's behind it? And then when you find out what's driving it, trying to solve it in a more holistic way. So looking at your nutrition, looking at your stress levels, looking at your toxins in your environment and how you live your life. So it's really getting that full picture and providing a holistic interventions. So anyway, I met with this doctor. She identified after some testing that I had a leaky gut. That essentially means that your gut lining has become permeable. There's holes in it, and it's not a place you want to be, even though I think it's a very high percentage of people have a leaky gut in some form. Mine was obviously very bad. So all my food and everything was leaking into my blood system, and it was just slowly shutting me down. And what those antibiotics did in the doctors was just even inflaming me more and making the gut issue even worse. So that's hence why I was getting worse. So when we identified that it was leaky gut, it was what can we change in our diet to what's causing it's a lot of it's caused that we're eating foods that don't suit us. Maybe we have sensitivities, intolerances. That's causing inflammation. Inflammation then is causing the leaky gut issue. So we looked at my diet, stripped out probably 80 to 90% of my sugar. I thought I had a healthy diet, but looking back, like I was living with the lads, we probably weren't. We were eating okay. Like we were all sports people, we probably thought we were eating okay, but for me, it wasn't okay. So I stripped out a lot of my sugar, went a lot more plant-based. She also introduced me to a few supplements as well, CBD being one of them, which we can talk about why we started Ethos. But I got my health back with this new diet, cut out a lot of dairy as well. I got my health back in like 5 weeks. And it was, as I always describe it, it was like the clouds just lifted. And when you're in that point of being, really sick, nothing else matters in your life apart from just getting well. It's just a very narrow focus. So when you get that health back again, it was a game changer for me. And yeah, as part of that process, I suppose I went on my own health journey, got introduced to CBD, which was one of the products that really helped me for inflammation at the time. and I needed to go and source a good product. At the time, there was one or two maybe Irish companies doing it. Nobody, I would say, overly reputable. And so I went to the States to get my products. But then myself and Amy were talking about trying to create CBD products that we grow the hemp here, create the products here end to end, and develop products that are unique, that help people with specific needs, functions, because a lot of the products are quite generic. And that was the initial step on our journey to creating Ethos. And I suppose it was a realization for me that maybe the corporate life wasn't for me. My family are all entrepreneurs, so I always had that kind of entrepreneurial itch, and I suppose that just simultaneously culminated with my own health problems, and then we started into Ethos. You could probably add on then how I roped you in.
Yeah, I suppose when Fergus was planning Ethos, it wasn't a fully formed business yet. I was working in an agency at the time, and I actually started a new job that I thought was my dream job. COVID hit, and my work was extremely stressful. I was severely burnt out as a result, and Fergus was like, well, I need the marketing support, so if you want, we can do this together. And I suppose it was a good time because we weren't spending any money. We were stuck at home. So decided to join Fergus at Ethos. And then we launched in November 2020. And it was the best decision I ever made for my career. And yeah, we've been going now for about 3.5 years. It's been a great journey. As Fergus mentioned, we initially launched with CBD products. Just there about a year ago, we went through a bit of a brand repositioning. We do a lot of research with our customers, and the common denominator, whether someone has sleep issues or they could have inflammation and whatnot, stress is always the common denominator. So we decided to reposition the brand as a stress care brand. So working with some of our practitioners, doctors and nutritional therapists who help us with our formulations, we identified 5 functions within the body that are directly related to stress. So the gut, the mind, sleep, immunity and energy. And we've built our product range around those 5 key functions within the body. So yeah, we launched our stress care brand back in August last year. And yeah, it's been a huge success to date. We're in over 300 retail stores in Ireland, some of the biggest chains. And we're now looking at bringing stress care into more mainstream. So we're looking at supermarket partnerships at the moment as well. So the Ethos brand is a prestige brand. So I suppose what that means is it's a nice blend between mass market, but also has a bit of a prestige element, which has always lended itself quite well to us. Most food supplement brands, I would say, they're quite clinical or medical looking, and they have their place. But the beauty of the Ethos brand and the way we've built it is it can really flex. So we're really excited about the next year and the different channels that we might be able to take it.
Yeah, and we've obviously linked in with you guys for a lot of our corporate retreats, and we've used your supplement resilience as part of our kind of gift bags. And I can definitely attest to the fact that all our employees that we work with have been extremely happy, and obviously it doesn't just taste very nice, but obviously they've seen the impact as well from using it. So obviously, thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
Obviously, when you think about growing a supplement brand or a range of supplements, there's no doubt that there's going to be extreme challenges with that. It is a market which is saturated, right? Some good people in that market, some not so good people, obviously. But when I've listened and I've engaged with you guys, you can really see that, and it comes out of your story as well, Fergus. Obviously, what you've experienced yourself has been the initial push for the business idea. But tell me about some of the challenges you guys faced initially, because, you know, now you're in, as you mentioned, a number of stores. You've been able to bring in new products as part of the overall brand. But what were those challenges like in the early days?
Yeah, like the key challenge for us was CBD, and because it comes from the hemp plant, which is a cousin of the cannabis plant. straight away you're into a bit of a legal quagmire here where it was in this grey area, even though like it's governed by, we've done everything, we've ticked every single box from a regulation perspective, but there's still fear out there. There was anyway, going back 3.5 years ago about the product. Looking back, like in hindsight, would we have ever started with, we started with it because of my story and because it worked for me. Yeah. But the headaches that we've had because of that, if we were to go back, we probably wouldn't have started there, just to be perfectly honest. We were cut off from all supports from, like the local enterprise office, Enterprise Ireland, supports that we went through the full process with them. And they were like, yeah, you're entitled to, 60K or this. And then at the last second, it was pulled from us because of CBD. So, and as any small business owner would know, those grants or those little supports, early days, like they can be a game changer. So they were some of the key challenges, then trying to educate all the retailers on it. Now, to be fair, the health store channel, we're very educated on the space and we're very bought in. The pharmacy channel, that's like a whole other piece of work. And we never really cracked the pharmacy channel. Now, our new products are in pharmacies. Some of the pharmacy chains, to be honest, more of the progressive ones did take it on and it sold very well for them. But that was a huge challenge, trying to educate people on what CBD is, how it's not non-psychoactive, all the benefits behind it, the research behind it. I would say that was some of our key challenges on top of all the business ones.
I'd say it was definitely a challenge, but I suppose what kept us going was like we had a lot of people buying the product. So while the CBD was a challenge from a grants perspective and all those kind of things, you might say, well, why didn't you quickly adapt and try do something else? Well, like we had the customers there. People wanted our product. They still want our product. Yeah. We have like an unbelievable repeat purchase rate on our 2 of our CBD oils, are Rest and Balance. So for that reason, that really was what kept us going and kept us going through all that kind of stuff that we had to deal with,
So you could see that there was a massive need in the market. It was just, as you say, any new business, those government supports can be really helpful at that time when you're really trying to, I suppose, expand. But obviously what really helped you guys at that time was the fact that people were buying the product. They saw the value.
People were buying it, yeah. COVID was a blessing, like obviously a terrible time for everyone, but it was a blessing for e-commerce businesses. E-commerce just boomed and people were at home. They had time. They had a lot of money because they weren't spending it on anything else. They were stressed and they couldn't sleep. So it was a perfect cocktail for us. And that really helped us scale the e-commerce business quite quickly. And as we were bootstrapping and growing organically, the fact that we were able to launch and do like really good revenue in our first month just like allowed us kind of snowball and invest everything. And we've invested everything back into the business, but it allowed us to like take off. So yeah, COVID was great. Obviously retail was completely cut off at that time because no one's able to go out. But since then, the e-commerce boom has probably leveled off and plateaued a bit. But obviously, retail came back strong. So it just kind of there was a nice kind of flow there between the both.
And I can see you've said obviously about you've reinvested everything back into the business, and now we see Tru Health, and that's like an extension in a way. It's like you're offering a further service, but obviously it's a much more detailed service for individuals.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Tru Health.
Yeah, I suppose as we've been working on Ethos, like Fergus and I, day to day, we get a lot of people onto us, asking us questions, telling us a lot about their health and looking for advice, which we can't offer because neither of us have a medical background. But we do get our doctors and nutritional therapists to help us on that. But, supplements can only go so far. And the Ethos range is for specific needs. But we would often be asked to join podcasts like this, tell our story. And anytime Fergus would tell his story or I'd tell my story of burnout, people would get on to us and ask us, like, who was the functional medicine doctor you were working with? Who was the nutritional therapist that you were working with? And we were like, okay, there's an even bigger need for this out there. And I think by nature of Ethos and the work we do, like Fergus and I really enjoy helping people. And there's nothing more exciting, empowering and energizing than getting to help people in your everyday work. So really, as we were working on Ethos and learning more about what people need, and then going through the whole functional medicine or nutritional therapy space ourselves, we saw an opportunity to create a further business. So the functional medicine space, from a business perspective, it's very costly, and it's very, very time consuming. So, clients get like 1 hour to 1.5 hour appointments, which is what they need and what they deserve, to get to the root cause of whatever their chronic health issue is. But I suppose from a scalability perspective, it's not very scalable. So Fergus and I started looking at different technologies or ways that we could lend our skills to this industry. And really that's kind of where Tru Health came about.
Yeah. Like I think we're at a real turning point in medicine. Like the next 5 years are just going to turn what we know as modern medicine on its head through like AI, big data, and the way medicine is being delivered there's going to be a light shone on the, like, I don't want to like diss modern medicine. There's so many unbelievable things about it, but there's a lot of it that's like is really poor and is getting really poor results. Like I found out actually last week that the third biggest cause of death in the world is through medical error, just after cardiovascular and what was second? Anyway, it was the third biggest in the world, medical error. We know like 1 in 3 people who take medication, it doesn't work, yet these people are on medication for the rest of their lives. So we as people are being bounced between, big pharma and big food at the moment. And we're stuck in the middle and we're all getting chronically ill. The graph, it's just a hockey stick graph for chronic illness. And this chronic illness is at the root cause of it is stress most of the time. It's lifestyle related problems. And we are trying to solve it with non-lifestyle related interventions. Like kind of going back to my story, God, he's got fatigue. Here's some antibiotics, but without digging that deeper. So with big data and AI, it's going to show what really works, what doesn't work. And it's also going to allow us bring a whole other level of personalization to the space. So as Amy said, with Tru Health, we are building a model. It sits on top of that functional medicine approach, but building it a lot more scalable, using AI at the core of it. And how we're going to do that is as the foundational models, everybody knows ChatGPT, there's Llama, there's Claude, there's loads of them. They are getting like just so smart very quickly. So we're using biomedical foundational models. So that has all the biomedical information that's out there in the world, essentially. And we are then fine-tuning it with our own data that we get through clients coming through our clinic, and there's other sources that we can use the data. And what we're trying to do simply is to understand people at a whole other level of detail. And how we do that is we do a whole person assessment. And that looks at from the minute you were born up until today. It recognizes the mind and body and all that's one key facet of functional medicine. It recognizes that our symptoms are connected. So if you're having an issue like a headache, it's not just that could be driven from your gut. We all know now that like a lot of mental health illnesses, they're due to nutritional deficiencies that's stopping like your serotonin being produced and like dopamine. So we're getting to a whole other level of detail through an assessment. We track your lifestyle in detail. And then we also do some functional testing, looking at your blood work, looking at your gut, and some other functional testing where required. We're bringing all that data together, I suppose, in our engine, using the technology to synthesize it, determine what the root cause of your health issue is now, or even before you have a health problem, if you follow this track, what your future health issue could be. All that information then our doctor uses it in a consultation with the client to go through it and identify the root cause. And then we put our clients on this personalized health plan, looking again holistically, personalized nutrition, therapeutic supplementation, stress resilience, behavior change. And over time, as our model gets better, we'll be able to deliver this in a hyper personalized way that, we all have different appetite to change. We all have different personality types. Your plan, we all have different goals, and some of us can manage 3 things at once. Some of us can manage one. How can we give you a health program or a plan that's really personalized to you and that's going to help you with your root cause? So yeah, that's the idea of it. We want to position ourselves to work alongside the conventional system, because a lot of the times going to the GP, that's exactly where you need to go. But we feel like if 10 people go to the GP, 7 or 8 of them, that's where they need to be. There's 2 of them who are probably like me, and that just medication only, it maybe isn't the route for them. They have something deeper that a 15-minute GP appointment isn't going to be able to solve. How can we bring the two approaches together? Because I think when you explain it, sometimes functional medicine gets a bad rap. Now that's changing. But like if you break it down just to the basics, it's just recognizing that all our systems are connected, trying to understand the why behind your health symptoms, and then trying to use like a toolbox of techniques to get it right. Like it's quite simple stuff. And if you break it down like that, I find it hard that anyone can argue with the approach.
Yeah, and I think obviously the principles of functional medicine, I couldn't agree with them more. I think it's astonishing how we've got this far in terms of the medical world, and we don't have that as an element, mainstream yet. Because even if you think about, and obviously because a lot of our listeners are founders, and something that we've spoken about quite a lot on this podcast is people who are extremely driven. So obviously really driven for success. But then if you ask them, what's behind the drive, or why do you want, why are you striving for that goal, let's say? And it could be like, generally it can be a financial goal for their business, but then you unpack that a little bit and then they actually realize, no, you know what, actually, I don't know why I really have that as a goal. And then you go a bit deeper, and then you go, like I would go a lot deeper with the coaching that I do. And eventually you realize it's being driven from maybe a feeling of inadequacy from when they were younger. And all of a sudden they've never felt good enough. And they've just fallen into this spiral. And the reason I bring this up is because not only do they fall into a spiral where they're chasing something that they don't really want, but that also has extremely negative impact then on their overall health. I saw an article at the weekend, yourself, Fergus, and I know you were featured in it as well, Amy, but one of the stats was 58% of business owners are stressed. And I kind of laughed to myself because I was thinking, I would actually say it's closer to 100% of business owners are stressed.
I was absolutely shocked. That's what I said it to the journalist when she quoted the stat as, it's like, what are the other 42% at? Because that's what we need to be doing. Because it's just, it comes part and parcel with a business. Like you have to take on a certain amount of stress. It's the word that we always go back to, that resilience word. It's like, how can you absorb it, take it, and like, yeah, be able to manage it. And like I speaking personally, a lot of the times that can be very hard. I was saying to you before, like there's a bit of irony in what we're doing now. We're very we have a real like mission behind this business. It's coming from personal experiences. We're trying to really help people. A lot of the times it's stress related conditions, and like I'm certainly extremely stressed trying to working on this business, launching it, and then you're like, you don't want to be a walking contradiction, because it's like, what are you doing it for if you're going to be feeling the negative effects of it as well? So but it's just something I need to keep myself in check.
Stress is inevitable in life, right? Like you can't just like delete stress from your life and then it's gone forever. So I think the beauty of this process that Fergus and I have been on is like, we know that we're going to have inevitable stress, whether it's family life or work, but we now have the toolkit, our own personalized toolkit that we reach into and we have access to every day. That really helps us basically stay resilient and sustain what we want to do. And I think that's really important. And a big part of the value that we're giving customers at Tru is like, we're not expecting people to like completely delete stress from their life. It's going to come up, but you being able to access that toolkit for yourself every day or every week, or when big moments in life come up, that's where the real value is, And
I think having the toolkit, like, that's why I really like what you've described with Tru, because I think it's nearly sometimes like a vicious cycle. If I'm stressed as a founder and I don't have the toolkit, well, what is my toolkit? It's probably alcohol, or it's something else which isn't going to be conducive to good physical and mental health, especially over a long term. And that's where I think we really fall down when it comes to, like, the inevitable stress of running a business or being a manager or being a high-level executive or being really anybody in today's society, we are going to be met with that inevitable stress. But do we have the toolkit? And that toolkit, in a way, it can be vast, but there's certain aspects of that some people need more than others. Like I would maybe work with somebody and, having a conversation purely around their identity and, as a business owner, the value they get from their business success and how they need to challenge that a little bit. You wear other hats in your life. Do you get value from those areas?
Yeah.
For other people, they may not be exercising. They may not be eating right. They have got a lot of self-esteem and self-confidence, but it's actually more on the physical aspect that they need to maybe spend a little bit of time and attention. So I think having a toolkit for founders, executives, managers, moms, dads, it's incredibly important because life is moving so fast for everybody that it's so easy to just pick up the easy meal, just skip the gym, just jump in front of the TV, just crack open the wine on a Thursday night now because you know what, you're feck it. Like, yeah.
It's nearly the weekend.
Yeah, this is our toolkit for many of us in today's society.
Yeah. Isn't it so interesting that I can speak from my own experience of burnout. Like when I was very stressed, it was during lockdown and I was so looking forward to my glass. Well, I'm going to say glass. It was really a bottle of wine on a Friday and my takeaway. And, I was throwing money at virtual cacao ceremonies and all these experimental things. But when I look at it now, I'm the foundations were what was missing. I wasn't eating well day to day. Yeah, I was ordering a salad, but it was probably laced in all this rubbish that just didn't suit me personally. Or, I wasn't doing the exercise that suited me while I had high cortisol, or I wasn't spending time with friends and family, and these are the real foundational elements of which true health is built upon. You can spend all the money in the world on these big aspirational things or, wearables and things like that, but you just have to have the foundations right to see any sustainable health and well-being.
Yeah, and I think if you haven't got those, if you can't give the time to those foundations, if anybody's listening in and they're just saying, I just haven't got the time for those, I think that itself is probably the biggest message to take out of this so far is if you haven't got the time to prioritize those foundations, it's going to, hit you further down the road and probably leave you with less and less time, less and less energy as a result. So trying to do some of the things that we're talking about, obviously, today, and even just, I like how you said, Amy, the type of exercise for, if you're highly stressed, the thing probably not to do is to go and do a high intensity exercise class. It's getting into the routine of going for a walk every day, something as simple as that.
It's a minefield for people out there.
Yeah.
I was at a health conference at the weekend in London and the array of things that people are promoting you should be doing, and it's just, there's not time in the day to do it. So at that starting point is you really just need to focus on some of the foundation elements. What's easy for you. You just can't do it all. If you can crack them, then you can layer on stuff. The other key point around stress as well, I think people just have a very narrow-minded view of what it is, and they straight think anxiety or mental. But that link between your physical body and your mental, all the science shows now, your gut microbiome, how that impacts your serotonin levels, as we mentioned, and your anxiety, how you can deal with things, your resilience. So nutrition obviously is the key base for everyone. I think we're busy, obviously, on the go. The one thing that we are very regimented about is our nutrition. I think if we didn't have that now, everything could fall to pieces, And we're very disciplined of doing our shop on our Sunday, prepping as much as possible. I understand, we don't have kids yet, or people have, lots of kids running around, and even that the prep is how am I going to fit that in? So yeah, I'm cognizant everyone is in a different position, but if you can get that certainly right as a foundation, it can have a knock-on effect.
And what I really liked about, in terms of when you talk about stress throughout your websites and when I've heard you speak, you put it in the middle of this idea of there's healthcare, there's self-care, and then you've got this stress care in the middle. I think people really struggle to define what stress is, if they're experiencing, it's such a throwaway word as well now. Oh, I'm stressed, or give us a bit of clarity, give our listeners a bit of clarity on how you would define stress, and then maybe how, when you think about you both as founders, how you then approach dealing with that inevitable stress.
Yeah, like stress, I think in its simplest terms is just being out of balance. So the holy grail state for all humans is homeostasis, where everything is just in balance, working as it should. All your systems are talking to each other like it should. But when you're stressed, either one or multiple of your systems aren't functioning like they should. You're out of balance. Some stress is very good, as people know. It's like hormesis, I think, where you're kind of giving yourself these little stressors every day, if that's going for a sea swim or whatever it is. But it's the chronic stress where the cortisol levels are high for like an extended period of time. That's where you're into a spot of bother. That's where inflammation starts happening, and that has all those knock-on effects on your gut, on your mental.
I'd say as well, like the definition of stress, like, so a lot of people, well, I certainly back in the day would think that stress is like a significant stressful moment in your life that makes you feel, you know, worried, anxious, you're thinking about it all the time. But I know now that stress is the stress of every day, the busyness of every day, and trying to keep things going. It's like, you know, getting to work for 9 o'clock, through rush hour traffic or public transport. You get there, you sit at your desk, and then you have to be at a meeting in 10 minutes, and boom, 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 boom. Like, I'm exhausted right now, even just explaining that small part of the day. That is stress. Anyone who's listening and wears a Whoop or a monitor like that, you'll see that on your data. Like, you'll see these little micro moments of stress building up every day, and longer term, that can actually have more of an effect on your health than, say, one significant moment of stress that we all have in our lives. And it's really learning how to deal with those micro moments and how to adapt and build inner resilience.
And when you think about your day, you know, so your day in work, you've mentioned it there, Amy, as well, how, and I'm sure many can relate, you're going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And I like that difference between, we'll all encounter major stressors in our life, and we really need to dig into the toolkit then and obviously really utilize all those tools. But I think it's very easy for us to fall into the trap of just being busy every day and not realizing the impact that maybe this is having on me. So how do you both go? You mentioned the nutrition piece, obviously, as a foundation, but what else do you do during your busy days to make sure that you keep a little bit of that balance that you're talking about?
For me anyway, like, the best days are always the day where I get my exercise done in the morning, because if that's hanging over me and the day is building up on me and I know I have to fit that into my evening, and then I'm trying to eat all my meals before 6 o'clock, and then I'm like, how am I going to train, you know, before that? And then everything is just going to shit. So this morning was actually like our perfect morning. Did like the reformer Pilates, which is just, I've become obsessed with that. Early in the morning, you had your like nutritious breakfast. We got out for a bit of a while. I had a cold shower. It wasn't because our immersion is actually is broken, but like it was a cold shower, so that was nice. So for me, it's starting that. In terms of the day, then I'm trying to bring in just little 5-minute piece of breath work, because I can feel myself getting amped up at certain times in the day, and it's trying to use a few of the common techniques out there, really trying to deregulate some breath holds, like let the carbon dioxide in and then like get the blood flow going, and just really trying to bring down my heart rate, probably cortisol throughout the day. Besides that, they're kind of like some of my key things.
I'd say the secret sauce for us, and like, I don't know, I'm always grateful that like we both had our health journeys quite early on in life, because for a lot of people that doesn't happen. And we've learned a lot from that process. But I think the secret sauce for the two of us is like, we plan our day around the things that we know we need to do to make us feel good. So like, we do not compromise on our food. We do not compromise on our exercise. Even if that means that like we get up at 6:30, but we don't start work till 11 to give us flexibility to do the things we need to. Now that's so much easier said than done, because I know for a lot of people that's not possible. But the more you plan, the more you're going to succeed at doing those things that you want to do for yourself, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. Have you found your flow like as a entrepreneur, I suppose, what parts of the day you're working really well and other parts, like, because I feel like, there's a couple of hours in the morning I can smash it, and then later in the evening I'll also get a few solid hours done and some probably wasted hours during the day.
Yeah.
We're lucky, like a lot of people, obviously you're 9 to 5, you have to do that. I think in a way you're luckier as an entrepreneur that you can start to see when you can be most effective. I don't know, have you found your flow with that?
Yeah, and I think it's a really great point to bring up, because I think the way that we work as well, apart from being an entrepreneur, I think the way that people are told to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, I think that's completely outdated. It's not in line with how we perform cognitively and physically. I think looking at 4-day work weeks, looking at chunks in the day is going to be far more beneficial. We're going to get so much more done. And personally, that's how I would approach it as well. I think people, if they realized at times that, some days if I get enough done in 3 hours, I'm done for the day. And I'm going to, if I feel that I've had enough impact in 3 hours, I'm switching off. And I look at the rest of that day then as, this is a really good opportunity for me to recover and actually potentially be able to carve out 3 hours tomorrow and be as effective as I was today. Because I completely agree with what you said, Fergus. I think there's a portion of time, and for me it's the morning as well, after I've exercised and had the cold shower and then I'm like, right, I'm ready to sit down uninterrupted and really get the high impact work done. And then after that, it's the easier stuff, like responding to emails, obviously dealing with team members, etc. But those 3 hours that I carve out, that's the highest impact work. And if I don't get those in, well, then you're really just in firefight mode and you're not really progressing. You can't really see the woods from the trees, as they say. So I think that for an entrepreneur, getting that flow right, and one thing that founders really struggle with, and I think everybody actually really struggles with this now, is we have such a need to want to showcase the value that we bring. And I think that drives us to work late into the evening time, to miss things that we shouldn't, to stop prioritizing, things that we really should. Obviously, as you said, you don't compromise, Amy, on those things. And that's going to give you so much energy. I think I see it with a lot of people I work with, especially managers. I think we're at a point now where we're very unproductive in our work. We're available all the time. And that's a recipe for disaster in my opinion. I think we need to get far better at being able to prioritize those things that we know give us energy, and also know when, okay, I've done enough today, I can actually switch off. Like, there's really interesting research which has been done over the last number of years by a researcher called Sabine Sonnentag, and it's looking at recovery from a work perspective. So how effective am I in my work when I actually get good quality recovery? And she defines it as recovery experiences and recovery activities. So a recovery activity might be, like you said, Fergus, as I'm going through my day, I take 5 minutes to do a bit of breath work. And that's in there. No matter how busy I am, no matter how stressed I feel, I'm going to get 3 portions of my day where I bring that breath work in. And then a recovery experience might be, right, at 6 o'clock, I'm switching off, I'm bringing my son to the football, and I'm just going to be fully immersed in that for 2 hours. I'm not going to look at my phone. And, the research, although it's still early on, the research is showing that people who do prioritize those recovery activities and recovery experiences are far more productive during their working hours. And, I'm sure people are like, that's not surprising. But I find myself sometimes going out on a Saturday to watch my little nephew play football, and I'll take the phone out of my pocket and I'm like on LinkedIn, and then it'll just hit me and I'll go, what am I doing? Put that away. Like, this is your time to fully disengage. And I think it's getting to that point where you say to yourself, I need this recovery time. And then you get the value of that on the other side. So I think knowing how you work well is extremely important. I'm sure you both maybe would.
Yeah. The value, going back to what you said earlier about what people actually value. And like, I just realized that I've only started doing it very recently. Is that every week on a Monday, I sit down and I do this detailed plan for my work. Maybe I'll do a bit of a plan for my gym, but there's also all these other things that I value, like Amy, my family. Yeah. It's like, and these are at the top of the list, your family, your friends. I should put down a plan for them for the week as well.
That's
what are
such
the
a
two
good point.
things I'm going to do? Because like I go into such detail on work, and work is probably only like third right now. It's higher maybe than it normally would be, but it's like third maybe on my list. And it's like for the top two, I don't usually put a plan together at all.
That's such a good point as well to bring up, because it comes up time and time again where we have all these goals and all these structures built into our week around work. And then we wonder why I struggle with my exercise, or my relationship maybe isn't where I want it to be. Or because it's funny you say that. I did a talk recently with shift workers, and they really struggle to prioritize we do a lot for shift worker well-being, and they really struggle. Naturally, sleep is generally poor. And we were talking about obviously how they can get into better habits. And one key for me is looking at the calendar and saying, right, across my week, what's important to me? Where do I slot it into my calendar? And I made a joke, like I'm married now 2 years, and I said to them, on a Wednesday night, 5 o'clock onwards, like that's Mark and Sarah time. So that's, we carve that out every single week. That's our date night. And, some of them are laughing saying, you're 2 years married and you already have to do that. Like, I'm like, but, why wouldn't I do that? I carve out the time in the morning to go to the gym. Now, I'll generally interact with Sarah a lot through the week, but we both look forward to that Wednesday. That gives us a lot of energy, because we're like, right, yeah, Wednesday night, what are we going to do on Wednesday night? So I think it's an excellent point. It works well for work, so why don't we do it with the other things that are really important for us?
We need to do Wednesday date night.
We were talking about that recently, especially because we work together, so we're together all the time. So like the line between work and like your relationship, outside of work, I think even puts more emphasis on that we have to plan and carve out those times. Otherwise, it's just.
And can you actually unpack that a little bit for me? Because I would say that my biggest support is my wife when it comes to work. Like, she's always there to lend an ear and generally sees things far better than me when I bring situations to her. What is that like for yourselves? I'm sure you're both extremely supportive, but naturally when you're in the arena, let's say, that can be stressful.
Yeah.
How does that dynamic pan out for you?
Yeah, it's the one question we always get asked. It's gas. I don't know. Like, I think there's no formula necessarily. I guess Fergus's family are very entrepreneurial, and so are my own. So, like, my parents always work together. His parents always work together. So it's kind of a dynamic that we're used to seeing. I think it's also a very natural dynamic. It's just not something natural of the modern society. But if you think back to like, even like 50 years ago, like, family farms were a thing. I guess they're still a thing, but like, the family commerce was a thing. So in one sense, I think it's quite native to us as human beings. But yeah, it's definitely tricky at times. Like, the one great thing about us working together is we're always aligned on our vision, and our skill sets then are quite different. So we do complement each other in that sense. But there are inevitable challenges all the time. Like yesterday, we were working on a project together that we thought was going to take 2 or 3 hours, and it literally took the whole day. And Fergus was like, right, this is it. We need to end this right now. This is not working. So we definitely do have those moments. But yeah, I think we make it work. And as I mentioned earlier, like, we're both so passionate and driven about what we're doing. Like, fundamentally, our business is offering a lot to other people. So there's a lot of joy there in our work, and we both wouldn't have it any other way, I don't think.
Yeah, like the joyous times or the good times are just so much more elevated when we're both in it together. And in those moments, we're like, we wouldn't do anything else. I don't even know what it'd be. What it feels just so normal now, that I kind of bounce everything off you, and you bounce everything off me. And if we were like in different jobs now, I think it'd feel so strange. Yeah. Even though like that's how it was at the start for the first 4 or 5 years of our relationship.
I think your dad said it when you were starting Ethos. He was like, Amy, like, if Fergus is starting a company, like, it's your company too, inevitably. So you may as well get on the horse and
because you just be wrecking your head anyway about everything. Yeah. So it's something where it works well for us. I know, like, for a lot of couples, like, it just wouldn't work. But as Amy said, we kind of have separate skill sets. It can sometimes be a negative in a way that, like, our visions are often very aligned. Like, if you you know, if you showed like 10 colors on the screen and you were like, pick what the top 2 are for you. Like me and Amy would pick the same 2 like 9 out of 10 times.
Right, yeah.
So there's very little conflict normally when it comes to what's good, what does that look like, even from a brand perspective or for strategy. But that's also a negative, you know, that we're very aligned.
You haven't got any dissenting voice.
Yeah, you need the dissenting voice.
Yeah.
It's one weakness I certainly have, like in my work life, is that kind of mentor, that dissenting voice, that someone just to challenge stuff. As someone I'm trying to find, there's a couple of people we work with like that are very impressive, and it's trying to get more of them, I suppose, into our lives.
And it's great to have our co-founder, Dr. Sally, for Tru Health now. So
it's great to have another.
And the 3 of us are all quite different as well, which is great. And looking for a 4th co-founder as well, a CTO. So that will definitely bring another new perspective, you know.
Yeah, so she's a doctor based in the UK, and she's the only doctor in the UK. I've trained in the NHS, but retrained in functional and lifestyle medicine and also neuroscience. She's done. Amy's seen her CV recently, which just put us all,
never seen a CV
put us
like
all
it.
to shame. But
Yeah.
she's the medical brain behind Tru Health, just to put that out there, because we that's not obviously our skill set.
And you mentioned there about mentor and searching for a mentor potentially. And I think that's a really good point and topic to discuss a bit more, because what's funny is I mentioned on this podcast before that I was doing a bit of research myself, and one of the resources that all of the CEOs that I interviewed mentioned, so something that really gives them energy to be able to do the roles that they do, was having a good mentor, having somebody that they can confide in. For you, and maybe for you both actually, this would be a nice one to get an answer to. What do you think it's important to look for in a mentor?
Yeah.
Because you haven't found one yet, as you said.
No,
I haven't found one.
I haven't found one. And then
yeah.
am I valuing it enough to put enough time into it each week? You probably need to be talking to a lot of people. I don't know. For me, like straight away anyway, I'll know within 2 minutes, like they need to just be impressive, you know? And like, there's not that many impressive people you meet, but when you meet them, you're like, oh, I want to be working with them all the time. And like you speak to people all the time that have achieved so much, but like you're still, it could be someone who's achieved a lot less and they're just way more impressive. And I think, and obviously there needs to be a chemistry there, I think, with a mentor. Like that's with anything. If it's a therapist or if it's a mentor, you need to have that natural chemistry there. Ideally, they're somewhere further along the path that you're trying to go, ideally, but I don't think that's like a prerequisite. And yeah, they're kind of probably the main characteristics I'd look for.
I'd say for me, chemistry is definitely the most important. One of my old mentors actually was on a previous episode of yours, Michelle O'Keefe. So Michelle was my manager. Well, she was the CEO of our company, Electric Media, for about 7 years. And Michelle was an incredible, incredible leader. I learned so much from her. But if I think about like what Michelle really offered, not just me, but like everyone on the team would have said the same about her. She definitely had a really good connection with everyone. But then also had a really nice balance between like challenging you where you needed to be challenged, because at the end of the day, that's where the value of a mentor is, right? You don't want someone blowing smoke up your arse the whole time, you know? You need to be getting something out of it. And like, that was the great thing about Michelle, is like she always challenged where it needed to be, offered help and support, and she was a brilliant mentor. Yeah. And
can I ask you, because you said there about naturally as a mentor, the value is in somebody who will challenge you, right? But there's also this piece as founders and entrepreneurs where you've got to back yourself so much, because you're going to have so many kind of doors closed in your face. Your idea is not good. I wouldn't do that. You're going to hear that quite a lot. So naturally you develop this thick skin to be like, right, I've got to really believe in myself here to drive this forward. And in a way that can work against being open to feedback, or not open to feedback, but really taking that feedback and using it in the right way. Yeah. How have you managed that dynamic? Because you want to make sure that you don't, like as an entrepreneur and founder, you can't be constantly second guessing yourself. You know, that'll come across when you pitch, etc. But also it can be quite hard when somebody gives you some of the kind of the hard truths from time to time.
that was a massive weakness of mine. I think I'm getting better at it, but I have work to do on it, of ignoring a lot of the feedback and just be like, yeah, this is our thing. We've got it right. Our vision is right. Our strategy is right, and probably not listening enough. And like, I think we might have done that I certainly did at the start with Ethos. Whereas now when we've launched Tru Health, as you said, we're talking to investors and people and you're getting told no every day. But I'm really listen to what they have to say. Like, they're meeting 20 of us a day. They understand business models a lot better than us. They understand unit economics. They understand everything. Just don't be going in with your ego and try to listen to the feedback. So after every one of those meetings now, I'll email the guys and say, this was the feedback we got, like negative, positive, or whatever, because then we can tweak the overall vision, the problem we're trying to solve, like that and our mission, that doesn't change. How we carve that up, how we maybe change bits of our business model and our strategy, we need to be fully aware that we're probably very wrong in what we're doing. Most entrepreneurs are bluffing it, and if you talk to them, they're kind of like, okay, this is right. It's working for a while. It's a slight tweak, and we're all just finding our way, bluffing our way through. But you do need that vision and mission, as you say. So it's still hard when you get told, but now I'm like, okay, these people know what they're talking about. Some of them don't, and they might make a flippant comment without really looking into the detail. I think over time you start to learn, like, that was a bit of a throwaway comment. Like, we've been looking at this for years. They just looked at a pitch deck for 5 minutes. You take some things with a pinch of salt, but over time, if you start to listen, you will see themes in what's being said back to you. And then that can kind of inform where you go. So a work in progress from my side anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you explained that well. It is the key between taking it all on board, but then knowing what not to take on board as well. Because honestly, if we were to take literally every piece of feedback on board, our pitch deck would have evolved 1,000,001 times.
You'd go nowhere. Yeah, you'd go nowhere. And you do need that thick skin, as you say. You're going to get so many no's. But some people just aren't in your space, like they don't get your space. But you'll find people that do. And then they're like, yes, this is actually brilliant. We just might need this tweak. So
Ethos definitely set the foundation in terms of thick skin. So like Fergus looks after all things sales for Ethos, and in the early days was on the road banging down the door of all the independent pharmacy and health food stores, and would come home after a day of meeting like 10 people, and you were so deflated, but like straight back on the horse the next day you were back out again. And I was at home like, how is he doing this? I actually don't know how.
You got to be eternal optimist, is that the if you're otherwise, like, it's just gonna fold. I think anyone who goes and starts something, no matter how big or small, like, they have a level of optimism. They back themselves to a certain degree. So it's a balance, isn't it? It's a good question. It's a good one to think about.
It is, and you spoke there about being very clear on, and this, I'm going to bring this in because I think it relates to a couple of bits there. You talked about being really clear on the vision and the mission, right? And I know we sometimes throw those words around and you hear it quite a lot, like, what's your vision for your business? What's your mission? But I think having a really detailed understanding of what that is so important, because as you say, if you meet a potential mentor, you'll know it in 2 minutes if they understand the mission, the vision. And if they don't, well, you're going to take their comments with a pinch of salt, right? If they make a flippant comment, you're going to be like, you don't really understand the business. Yeah. Like, I've had mentors in the past who were great for me at the start. And now that I'm 10 years in business, when I sit with them now, I'm like, okay, so you've not really tracked the evolution of the business. You don't really understand it anymore. And I can get that from basically, the bits of advice you're trying to give me here. So you're respectful, you take them on board, you finish the coffee and you leave and you go, I didn't actually get anything from that. So will I sit and have coffee with that person the next time? Probably not. But actually the conversation I had last week, I could see that person really understood, still understands. They can see the vision, they can see the mission. And as a result, the advice I get from them, it might not be what I want to hear, but it makes sense because there's an understanding. So it may be negative feedback or feedback that's going to, lead to a change of something, but because they understand the mission and the vision, you'll take that on board and you might actually act on that. So I think that's even a good piece for founders, or just to always be very clear on what is it that I'm trying to achieve here. And sometimes that can be blurred because, naturally maybe, you lose a client or you bring a new product on stream and all of a sudden it's like, right, well, how does this fit with everything else? So sometimes that vision and mission can be blurred. So carving out that reflection time and, as we said, you said on the Mondays, Fergus, doing the kind of plan for the week. I'm sure you guys at the end of every quarter maybe get together and you kind of look at it and say, right, are we heading towards the North Star in a way? And then the second piece, obviously, so you talked about obviously having the mentor, but then you talked about facing the rejection. And I think if you're not really clear on the mission and the vision, there's a real time span on how long you can get rejected for without going, do you know what, I'll try my hand at something else. Whereas real clarity on that vision and mission, I even still find it today that even in my own business, we're not where we really want to get to just yet, but we're a percentage of the way there. And that kind of nearly says to me, right, do you know what? We're on the road. We're on the road to get there. So until I completely feel like, you know what, the roadblocks are up and it's not going to move where I want it to move, I've got energy. I can face rejections. I can keep moving forward because I still feel we're on the road to the ultimate vision that we created. Yeah. And
I think you need to objectify things a bit as well. And this is where the data comes in. And obviously in the tech world, it's all about proving your product market fit. That's kind of the place you want to get to. So with our new business, we've got defined metrics that we need to be hitting over the next few months to say, like, are we on the right track? And if we're not, why aren't we? Can we tweak things very quickly, iterate? But yeah, you'll get all these subjective opinions. You'll have your own opinions yourself, but you also, I think, where possible, need to use data, objectify things and see, actually, are we on the right track, guys? Like, this was our strategy in January. Let's reflect honestly now. It's the following December. We've only had X number of customers. Let's just have an honest conversation. Things aren't working. So I think it's the blend of both.
And even if it's doing okay.
Yeah. Is okay.
As you say, yeah.
Is okay good enough? Like our time is like,
yeah.
Is okay good enough for this? Like, is this something you are going to commit the next 5-10 years of your life to? Because that's what's going to take to build any sort of like decent sized business.
Because a lot of people stay in just because it's okay. It's ticking along. It's doing all right. But like you're saying, having that objective data to be able to say, no, listen, okay, why are we not here yet? And is it worth giving it another 6 months, or is it time to just pull the plug on this? Is obviously extremely important.
Yeah, it's very hard to pull the plug, but it can often be, the best thing you'll ever do. So yeah.
A lot of lessons, success or failure, there's going to be a lot of lessons in that for entrepreneurs. And what's interesting is, I don't know if you've come across this, there's a thing called Inspire Network. So basically it's a mentor program and it's run across a lot of the likes of, say, Finglas, Ballymun, a lot of individuals from those areas who are in college and seeking mentors. And what's very interesting is I've engaged with a couple of them, and naturally as a founder, they really kind of take their self-esteem is attached to their business. So if my business is doing well, obviously I'm a good person and things are great. If my business isn't doing well, I'm ultimately a failure, and obviously that spirals. And I think this conversation of, you can have an idea for a business, you can launch it, and it may work well for a while or it may fail, but it's the process in a way of what you've done, which is really what's going to stand to you, not necessarily the fact that the business has failed, because you're going to have more ideas. You're going to be able to action on those ideas. You have that risk tolerance, which in a way, that's the strength. Okay, if the business idea, as you say, wasn't necessarily product market fit at that time, that's okay. As long as you are able to pick yourself up and go again and take those learnings. And it sounds like, obviously, in your role as sales, especially in the early times for Ethos, Fergus, you needed to really leverage that, I suppose, that strength of being able to continue and keep knocking on those doors.
Yeah, there was some dark car journeys back from Kerry, and I had no one would buy a product off you. But I suppose they do thicken the skin. Like, at the time, you're just like, okay, maybe that didn't work because of that. Amy, we need a slightly new approach. You're just trying to think, why didn't it work, and tweak it. It's definitely not doomsday at the time, but like they are, some days are tough. Yeah.
And how do you stop that? Maybe obviously we're coming towards the end now, but I think this is a really valuable piece of information. How do you stop that really eating away at you? Because not every day is going to be fantastic. You're not going to make the sale every day, or you're not going to get the online orders every day. How do you stop that creeping in and that inner critic, I suppose, getting very loud and saying, are you really doing what you should be doing?
Yeah, I think you need to allow the inner critic kind of be, like, it's such a natural part of the process, but then recognize that it is just an internal voice. It's not like necessarily reality. I feel like we always default to the negative rather than thinking positively. But that's also not to say like go into things naively and think everything is all, roses or whatever. But yeah, I feel like it comes with experience, you know. I do think it comes with time. The key is always having your vision. So like, you know, your vision isn't going to be like, I'm going to Kerry today and I hope to get 3 out of 10 retailers locked in. Like, your vision is, in 6 months' time, I hope to get like 25 new retailers on the cards. And knowing that day in Kerry mightn't have worked out, but the next day might. It's easy to get caught up in the daily goals and things not going right on the day. But having that longer term vision and bigger goal is really what keeps you going, I think.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an experience thing as well. I think the bad days at the start were pretty cataclysmic, and then over time you're like, geez, we're going to have some shit days. We have some amazing high days, and over time you start to just notice like the bad ones really come in. Sometimes they hit you when you're not expecting it at all, and it's just a terrible day. But yeah, you learn to flow it a little bit more. I think the critic is always there. I think. For me anyway, like, I don't think that's ever going to leave me, and like, I don't think it's a bad thing if it doesn't. You know, you need something to kind of like drive you on as well. And yeah, going back to stress as well, like, there's a certain amount of that stress from that work that is good, and you're getting a buzz from it. When you lose that, like, you probably don't want to be doing it. But yeah, I'd say for any founder who's early in their journey, like, we got a few bad days early on, and like, you know, it just hit you like a ton of bricks. You're like, whereas now that same day is just like, it's just one of these days, weather through it, and it's fine. So there's a little bit of experience, I think, comes into it. Yeah.
I like to sum up kind of what both of you said in terms of, I love that idea of that one day will not define you, but obviously staying aware of what that vision is, and who knows what could happen tomorrow. I really like that.
That's the great thing, though, I find. Yeah. That's the big difference between working in, say, my consulting jobs and working in the business. You actually don't know what's going to... excuse me. You actually don't know what's going to happen in the next day. That's the big excitement with it. Whereas when you're in a job, for me, like, for some people, that type of job suits them. When I'm in a job and I kind of can see what's coming every day or every week. Even in my life, I always hated that. Like, so I did law initially. I could see my career path ahead of me. And that's what feared me more than anything. Yeah. Whereas when you wake up in the morning and like, you might get hit with something terrible today, or you might get hit with something unbelievable. We might like nail this big sale. And it's just that kind of lottery of the day. That's exciting.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good or bad, it's exciting.
Good or bad, it's exciting. You don't know what you're going to get. Today's been pretty good so far. So hopefully the afternoon won't be.
And you said as well about modularizing the highs and lows, Fergus, which I think is extremely important. That's a great bit of advice I got quite early on. You know, if you do make the big sale or you get the new client, yeah, it's great, but don't get too carried away. But obviously on those days where maybe you've lost a client or something goes wrong, you know, trying to really look at it again objectively, like what does this really mean? How do we start moving towards maybe solution mode on this, rather than it just completely, you know, naturally nosediving your mood and having an impact on all the other key areas of your life. So
I think we should celebrate our wins more, though. I think it's what we do as everyone, as humans. Like, we all remember the bad days so much worse when we get down on ourselves, and then we have one, like, we nail that sale or whatever it is in business. And it's just kind of like, oh, that's great, and we move on. But like, we need to try to find that balance as well. Naturally, we remember the bad things more than we remember the good ones.
And it's interesting as well, just to come back to like a professional network being like LinkedIn. I'm sure you guys find this yourselves. When you post something where you've had a win, like generally people are just so encouraging and, just really happy that you've done well. And it's funny because I don't think we should shy away from, as we're talking about, sharing some of the bad stuff as well. But I think we've nearly kind of gravitated towards now kind of LinkedIn is more about the kind of the bad days and the negative stuff. So maybe there's, as you say, Fergus, there's nothing wrong with celebrating those wins and being happy that actually we've achieved something that we set out to achieve as well.
Yeah, the one other thing I'd say, because you mentioned earlier, founders they get so tied up in the identity of the business and their fear of failure. And like the main thing I think I've learned over time is like people don't give a shit. Everyone has so much going on in their lives. If something happens to Ethos or Ethos failed in the morning, like about 6 people will care, do you know? So it's like, just don't be worrying. So everyone's worrying about their own stuff. So that fear of failure or whatever might happen, like just please don't let that get you in the way because people don't care.
That's such a nice message. And if you flip it the other way as well, I think it brings to life how important it is to, if you've got a brand and you want to try and get it on people's radars, how much you've got to actually actively, try to do that. Whether you're a business which is supplements or it's Tru Health or it's corporate wellness or whatever it might be, for people to really want to take notice, as you say, you've got to really kind of time and time again showcase the value that you can bring. So for founders listening in, if you're thinking, I put that one thing out and it didn't really, get the traction that I wanted it to, you've got to go back again and again and again for people really to actually take notice of what you're doing. Final question, I ask all guests this, and we're getting 2 for the price of 1 today, which is brilliant. So I always ask the question, what is one lesson you could leave our listeners with from your journey as a founder? And it can be as short as 1 sentence. So something that you would say, this is probably top of my list.
Oh,
I think we have kind of talked about it, but I would say just listen more.
Yeah.
Because that's probably that's the one thing I've learned, and it probably has negatively impacted the business in certain ways. They might have been micro things, but like that could have ended up being something fruitful. So listen more, yeah.
I'd add to that, it's kind of like a listen more part B, because I know you're talking about listen.
Get your own one.
No, you're talking about listen more, I guess, from a mentorship or perspective. But one thing that we've actually been really successful at both Ethos and Tru Health so far is listening more to our customers. Fergus and I will like pick up the phone to our customers at Ethos, or we'll send surveys out all the time. We're always keeping in touch with them. What do you want? What do you not like about the products? What do you love about them? What can we be doing more of? And like that really does help steer the ship. I think it's very important. And a lot of small business owners, they don't do that. Maybe they don't feel like it's that important. But for us, it's been a real value add.
Listen more. I love it.
Yeah.
Fergus and Amy, thank you very much for joining me. I wish you the best of luck with Tru Health, obviously recently launched. I will add that information obviously in the notes from today's episode. Okay. And obviously I couldn't speak highly enough of Ethos as well. I use a lot of your products. So
thank you, Mark.
Again, big recommendation to our listeners on that one as well.
Lovely. Thanks a million. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.